Okay, let's start this deep dive somewhere. Somewhere really familiar. I think almost everyone knows this feeling, but maybe, feels a bit silly admitting it.
Hmm.
That feeling when you're just stuck. Maybe you're at the self-checkout, right? And the machine freezes and the person meant to help is wandering off somewhere.
Oh, yeah, or you're trying to merge onto the highway
Yeah.
and the driver ahead is just hesitating, like leaving this massive gap, and you can feel the cars piling up behind you.
Yes, exactly that. And what happens inside, it's like, boom, instantaneous.
It really is. It's this sort of rush, isn't it? Like heat rising, and it completely bypasses any kind of rational thought.
Yeah, my jaw tightens up. I can feel my shoulders creeping towards my ears.
Hmm. And it's this irritation, this anger almost, that feels way, way out of proportion to the actual situation. It's not really about the traffic, is it?
Yeah.
Or the extra 10 seconds.
It feels deeper, like some kind of fundamental violation, like someone's messing with my time, my plan, my most, protected asset,
No,
my
no.
schedule.
Your schedule, yes.
Okay.
That sense of violation is key.
Right. I can feel the adrenaline just talking about it. It's this, itch you desperately need to scratch, a sense of injustice, almost.
Like something needs correcting now.
Yeah. And intellectually, I absolutely know it's irrational.
Yeah.
But emotionally, I feel ready to fight someone over merging etiquette.
Haha, yes. Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. Let's really unpack this. This intense internal friction we feel whenever the world outside, people, tech, even time itself, just refuses to move at our pace, our demanding inner rhythm.
Okay. So understanding that friction.
Understanding that friction, because that collision, that feeling when your internal speed slams up against the world's, reality,
Yeah.
that's actually one of the most profound teachings available to us if we look closely.
So we're not here to figure out why other people are slow or how I can shave another 30 seconds off my commute.
Haha, no, definitely not. Our mission today is to get curious about what this intense visceral irritation actually reveals about us, about our own internal state, and specifically what it tells us about the sheer velocity of our own conditioned mind.
So the focus shifts entirely. It flips inward. If I feel this huge pressure when things slow down, then that pressure, it must be coming from me, not from the slow driver.
Precisely. That's the quiet revolution, really, at the heart of so much reflective wisdom, particularly Buddhist psychology. It suggests that the slowness we perceive out there, it's acting like a mirror, a very precise mirror,
A mirror to what?
to the chronic, often unconscious, accelerated speed we're maintaining inside ourselves. And that intense friction, the thing we label irritation or anger or anxiety, that specific point of contact is exactly where suffering or dukkha is born.
Dukkha, which isn't just general unhappiness.
No, it's more specific. It's that deep psychological suffering, that kind of pervasive unsatisfactoriness that arises precisely from resisting what is. We have this internal map demanding the river flow exactly this way, right?
Okay.
And when it naturally curves or slows down, we suffer the collision. We suffer the gap between our demand and reality.
Okay, let's dig into that physical feeling first. That quiet storm brewing in the chest, as you put it. It feels so primal.
It is primal. It's
Yeah.
entirely physiological, and acknowledging that is, it's vital. That quiet storm, that's your sympathetic nervous system kicking into gear, fight or flight,
Over someone fumbling with coins.
over the perceived threat. When you encounter that unexpected friction, the slow driver, the person taking too long at the ATM, your brain, or at least parts of it, registers that loss of control, that inefficiency, as a danger signal.
So what happens physically?
You get the shallow breathing, right, up in the chest, the jaw clenches, cortisol starts pumping. You might even notice your foot tapping, or maybe fidgeting with your keys.
Oh, the foot tapping. Definitely.
It's your body's unconscious attempt to literally move the situation along. It's like this tiny physical scream for resolution. It feels like a violation because our timeline, our sense of order has been breached.
And let's be honest, we are so primed for this reaction today, aren't we? This isn't just me being unusually grumpy. It feels almost baked into modern life.
It's deeply conditioned. Absolutely. We live in an era that basically worships speed, velocity, optimization.
Everything has to be faster.
Everything. We're taught, from school onwards through our jobs, that time is the ultimate resource. It's something to be managed, squeezed, monetized. It's treated like currency.
We even talk about spending time, wasting time, saving time.
Exactly. And we surround ourselves with tools designed purely to accelerate things, instant messaging, next-day delivery, life hacks, speed reading. We're conditioning ourselves to expect instant gratification and peak efficiency in almost every domain.
To the point where we lose tolerance for anything else.
We lose tolerance. We forget that time could also be seen not as a commodity to conquer, but maybe as a vast flowing river to be entered, to participate in.
So when someone moves slowly in this context, they're not just causing a delay, they're actually challenging a core belief of our society. They're seen as wasting our precious time currency.
That's the crucial psychological leap right there. We don't just see a delay, we interpret it as resistance.
Resistance. How so?
Resistance to our plan, resistance to our will, and maybe most importantly, resistance to the image we have of ourselves. This efficient, capable, always in control person we've worked so hard to build and project.
So slowness feels like a threat to that constructed self.
It's a direct threat to the illusion that we are the masters of our own destiny, that we can bend reality to our schedule.
Okay. So the real discomfort then is being confronted with the raw fact that I'm not actually in control. Not as much as I like to think.
Exactly. And this leads us straight into a really profound Buddhist insight about the root of this impatience. It's connected to the idea of the flickering construct. The term is Sakya Dehi.
Flickering construct.
Yeah. The ancient teachings observed really closely that there isn't a solid, fixed, essential I or me inside us that actually owns time or gets to dictate how the universe unfolds. That self that gets so bent out of shape, demanding the world speed up, it's seen more as a temporary assembly, a flickering collection, a fluid bundle of conditioned reactions, habits, stories we tell ourselves, fears we carry from the past, projections about the future. It's not some permanent sovereign king on a throne. It flickers.
That's challenging, though, because it really feels like me. I have goals, responsibilities, deadlines that require efficiency. How can that demanding self, the one tapping its foot impatiently, be just a construct?
Well, think of it like this. The construct is the story, right? I am a busy person, my time is valuable, I am competent, and get things done. It's built from these labels and expectations.
Okay.
Now, when you're forced to wait, truly wait, with nothing to do, that construct starts to wibble, to flicker.
Why?
Because you're suddenly face to face with a moment where you are not being productive, not in control, not fulfilling the busy identity.
And that feels uncomfortable, threatening.
Deeply uncomfortable for the construct. Fear rushes in to fill that space. What do we often do? We grab our phone, right? Start scrolling, checking emails, anything, even if there's nothing new. That repetitive action is often the construct, desperately trying to reassert itself, trying to feel in control or productive again, even in a superficial way.
So the irritation isn't really about the slow person at all. It's more about my own anxiety that my constructed identity is dissolving in this moment of enforced stillness.
You've got it. And when that flickering construct, the one that desperately needs order and speed, crashes into reality, which is messy, unpredictable, and frankly, gloriously indifferent to our personal agenda, it suffers. And that brings us right back to the birthplace of dukkha.
The gap between what I expect or demand and what is actually happening. But can we explore that gap a bit more? What are the expectations we're imposing? It feels like more than just, this should be faster.
Well, it's layers. Definitely layers. First, there's the obvious logistical one. This transaction should only take 2 minutes. Simple enough.
Right?
But underneath that, often unconsciously, are deeper ones. There can be a moral expectation. This person should be more considerate of others waiting. That's a subtle judgment of their character, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And then, maybe the most profound layer, the emotional expectation. I deserve things to go smoothly. I shouldn't have to deal with these annoying little frustrations.
Oof. Yeah, that one stings a bit.
So the irritation, the suffering, isn't caused by the person fumbling or the slow traffic. It's caused by the vast, often unacknowledged gap between your internal mental blueprint of how things should be and the raw, untidy reality of how they are. Once you locate the suffering right there in that gap, you start to see something crucial.
What's that?
The external reality of the slow person, the traffic. It's basically unchangeable by you in that moment. But your expectation, your blueprint, that has the potential to be fluid. That's where the freedom lies.
I really like that metaphor you used earlier, the dam and the river. This idea that my conditioned mind, my ego, is like a dam trying to force reality, the river, into this narrow, rigid channel I designed. And that trembling I feel inside when the river inevitably pushes back or slows down, that feels incredibly accurate. That is the feeling of frustration.
It is, isn't it? The river, reality, it just flows naturally, without judgment. It's not rushing to the ocean because it thinks it's behind schedule. It slows down in the shallows, it speeds up in the rapids. It just follows its own nature, its own physics.
So my mind doesn't like that.
But the conditioned mind, the ego, wants to be the dam builder. It wants to regulate the flow, maximize the output, make it all perfectly predictable and efficient according to its plan. And that trembling you feel when the river naturally resists being forced, that's the friction. That's the impatience.
And building and maintaining that dam must take a lot of energy.
Exactly. That's a crucial insight. The sheer effort required just to maintain that dam, the constant vigilance, the planning, the demanding, the judging of the flow, that effort is itself a source of deep chronic stress and fatigue. It's exhausting trying to control the uncontrollable.
Wow. Yeah. The work of being impatient is tiring. And that work seems driven by this internal clock, this invisible metronome you mentioned, that quiet tyranny of the right pace.
That internal metronome, that constant subtle drumming of faster, faster, should be done by now. That's the voice of the ego. It's the voice of that fragile, constructed self insisting that things must go according to its timeline.
Why? Why the insistence?
Because it believes, mistakenly, that control equals safety. This voice isn't about genuine efficiency, really. It's more of an anxiety defense mechanism. The ego, in its drive for control, actually builds a kind of psychological prison for us. And the bars of that prison, they're forged out of time, demanding every moment be accounted for, justified, utilized.
Okay, but hang on. If I just stop seeing time as, a resource, a currency, how do I function? In the real world, my productivity, my value sometimes is measured by speed and output. Isn't just ignoring that a bit delusional?
That's a really important question. And the answer, I think, lies in making a distinction. It's the difference between focused, intentional action and hurried, anxious panic. In the ego's time prison, time absolutely feels like currency. Every second not spent productively towards a goal feels like theft, like loss. And the ego, playing the role of prison warden, patrols the corridors of the mind, punishing any perceived loitering, any delay with feelings of shame, anxiety, or anger.
And this leads to, what did you call it? Temporal dukkha.
Yes, temporal dukkha. It's a kind of uniquely modern suffering, perhaps.
Yeah.
The anguish that comes from living perpetually out of sync, out of rhythm with the actual present moment. Because we're constantly mentally elsewhere. We're racing towards some idealized future we're trying to manifest. Or we're stuck ruminating on a past we wish had gone differently, maybe faster or more efficiently.
Like FOMO,
Yeah.
fear of missing out.
FOMO is a perfect example. Pure temporal dukkha. It's the deep-seated anxiety that this moment, right here, right now, isn't good enough. That the real value, the real life is happening somewhere else, later, faster. So we can't just sit peacefully, can we? Our mind is already on to the next 3 tasks. Scheduling our relaxation time. Judging how productive we're being right now. We're living fundamentally out of sync with life's actual unfolding organic flow.
So the very efficiency we're chasing so hard, it actually makes us profoundly inefficient at just being present,
Yes.
just living.
That's the paradox. And the root of that relentless chase, it often comes down to this deep, often unconscious belief that speed equals safety.
How so? Safety from what?
It's the ego's ultimate miscalculation, really.
Yeah.
It holds this core belief that if everything moves quickly, smoothly, according to its plan, then it will be protected. Protected from chaos, from uncertainty, from vulnerability, from failure, from uncomfortable feelings.
So slowness feels dangerous.
Slowness feels like weakness, like failure, like exposure to the ego. It fears that if we loosen that tight grip on the timeline, disaster will strike. We'll be overwhelmed, we'll fail, we'll look foolish, we'll feel things we don't want to feel. But the tighter the ego grips that timeline, trying to force reality, the deeper the suffering becomes when life inevitably breathes at its own pace. Because life will breathe at its own pace.
And that tight grip, that resistance to vulnerability, that's where the anger comes from. Which brings us back to that story you mentioned about the monk.
Ah, yes. It's such a beautiful distillation of this whole idea. This young monk was getting incredibly frustrated by the very slow, deliberate pace of an older monk he worked with. He finally goes to his teacher and asks, Master, how do I deal with this anger I feel when he moves so slowly?
And the teacher's response.
The teacher replied, very gently, very profoundly, your anger is not about their feet. It's about your mind running ahead of your heart.
Wow. Your mind running ahead of your heart. That just lands. It reframes impatience completely. Not as a logistical problem, but as this internal split. Like my intellect is already miles down the road at the destination, and my poor heart and body are just being dragged along behind.
Yes. And the anger, the irritation, the frustration, that's the friction burn generated by that desperate dragging. The mind is prioritizing an imagined future, a timeline that exists only in thought over the actual tangible reality of the present sensory experience.
Whereas if my heart, my awareness was actually in the present moment.
If your awareness was fully present with the moment, just noticing the sight of the keys fumbling, or the sound of the slow footsteps, or the feeling of the air there would just be observation, maybe curiosity. But because the mind is racing ahead, demanding compliance with its schedule, the present moment becomes agonizing, intolerable. The instant we truly recognize that the source of the conflict is internal, not external, well, that's when the possibility for real change opens up.
Okay, the insight feels incredibly clear now. The anger, the impatience, it's a direct reflection of my own chronic acceleration, my mind running ahead. But when that heat actually starts to rise, when I'm in the situation and that old habit kicks in the foot tapping, the internal monologue of outrage, the insight just vanishes. Poof.
Yes. The habit energy is strong.
So how do we bridge that gap? How do we move from just intellectually knowing this stuff to actually being able to, stop the mind from racing ahead of the heart in real time when it counts?
We have to start with a really radical shift in how we view the emotion itself. We need to stop seeing impatience or frustration or anger as personal flaws or enemies we have to wrestle into submission.
Okay, so what are they then?
Think of them as messengers. As messengers carrying vital information. They're basically knocking on the door saying, hey, something in your relationship with reality right now is out of alignment. Pay attention.
So the feeling itself isn't the problem.
The raw feeling, the heat, the tightness, the energy is fundamentally neutral. It's just sensation. It's the story we immediately slap onto that feeling that creates the suffering.
What kind of stories? Can you give examples?
Oh, they're powerful, and they feel very convincing in the moment. Usually they start with something like, this proves, for example, this delay proves I'm being disrespected, or this incompetence proves I'm going to miss my important meeting and everything will fall apart. Or maybe this inefficiency just proves the world is fundamentally broken and chaotic and I'm not safe.
Yeah, I recognize those storylines.
The goal isn't necessarily to eliminate the heat, the initial sensation. It's to stop automatically believing the dramatic story that the heat is trying to sell you.
Okay, so the first practical tool is pausing and just witnessing, treating the emotion like data, not like destiny.
Exactly. The most concrete, actionable thing you could do is practice a kind of structured witnessing. When you feel that impatience flare up, the absolute last thing you should do is try to suppress it or distract yourself by immediately grabbing your phone.
Which is exactly what I usually do.
So what most of us do. Instead, try committing to a gentle, maybe 5-step pause, just for a few moments.
Okay, what are the steps?
First, literally, stop. Halt the physical fidgeting, stop the tapping foot, stop pacing, stop mentally rehearsing your complaint. Just freeze for a second.
Okay, stop.
Second, sense. Bring your attention, like a laser beam, right into the physical sensation. Where is the impatience living in your body right now? Is it pressure behind your eyes? A clenched jaw? Heat flushing your chest? A knot in your stomach? Just register the raw physical feeling without judgment.
Sense the sensation. Got it.
Third, name. Use really simple, neutral language. Don't say, oh my God, I'm so angry. Try saying internally, here's a sensation of heat, or tightness is present, or simply impatience energy. Naming it creates a little bit of space, a separation.
Right, it objectifies it slightly.
Exactly. Fourth, inquire. This is key. Gently ask yourself those 2 penetrating questions. 1, what am I trying to control right now? And 2, what story am I telling myself about how things should be in this moment?
What am I trying to control? What story am I telling?
Okay. And then 5th, release and return. Gently let go of the need to solve the external problem right now. Release the story. And then consciously bring your attention back to something incredibly simple and undeniable in the present moment. Maybe the feeling of your feet on the floor, the sound of the air conditioning, the color of the wall in front of you. Just return to bare reality.
That structured inquiry, asking, what am I trying to control and what's the should story? That really forces the attention inward, doesn't it? It makes you confront the ego's agenda.
It shines a light on the clinging, yes. That clinging, or upadana in Buddhist terms, is the fuel for the suffering. And this whole pause practice, that is the revolution of mindfulness, or sati.
But mindfulness isn't about emptying the mind, you're saying?
Not necessarily emptying it in the sense of becoming blank. It's more about filling it, but filling it with the actual reality of the present moment, rather than the ego's commentary about it. You fill your awareness with the weight of your own body sitting there, the specific sound of the hesitant voice you're hearing, the way the light is falling on that person's hand. When the mind is full of what is, The ego's narrow, controlling story just doesn't have as much room to operate. It loses its grip.
So we can actually use the feeling of impatience as a kind of doorway. If I lean into that heat and tightness, instead of running away from it, I might find something deeper than just surface annoyance.
You absolutely will. That moment of friction, that irritation, acts like a very precise navigational tool. If you gently lean into the impatience, inquire into it, you will inevitably bump up against the underlying fears that are being triggered in that moment.
What kind of fears?
The common ones are things like fear of missing out on something better, classic FOMO again, fear of being unseen or seeming insignificant, fear of things falling apart, chaos, fear of appearing weak or incompetent. These fears are like little doorways, pointing directly to where your sense of self is clinging most tightly, most rigidly. That's the root of the suffering, the clinging, the upadana.
Like checking the phone again. That's clinging to the identity of being needed or informed.
Precisely. It's clinging fueled by that temporal anxiety, that need to feel productive or connected, even when the situation demands stillness.
And just observing this whole process, the trigger, the feeling, the story, the fear, without immediately trying to fix it or judge myself for having it, that must be incredibly freeing.
It is the radical act of non-identification. It's beautifully taught in texts like the Satipatthana Sutta. When you can simply name the experience, here is a mind experiencing impatience, you begin to realize, moment by moment, that you are not the contents of your mind. You are the awareness in which those contents arise and pass away.
So instead of I am frustrated, it becomes,
A wave of frustration is currently passing through this body-mind system. That subtle but profound distinction creates the space, the gap, where real freedom can actually bloom. And that freedom is available regardless of how quickly or slowly the person in front of you happens to be moving.
Okay, we've talked about external slowness being a mirror reflecting our internal speed and a messenger carrying information about our clinging. But now let's consider maybe the most transformative idea yet. What if? What if this delay, this thing we perceive as an obstacle, isn't actually a barrier to progress at all? What if it's more like a sacred interruption? A doorway to something deeper, something like awakening that we're usually too busy trying to slam shut.
That shift in perspective, that reframing, is really the cornerstone of profound personal growth. The idea that everything that disturbs us, everything that pushes our buttons, is actually an invitation to see more clearly, more deeply.
So the traffic jam isn't just bad luck.
Maybe the traffic jam isn't just a flaw in city planning. Maybe it's also a signal that our perception has become incredibly narrow, that we've developed this kind of cognitive tunnel vision focused solely on the destination, and we're completely missing the wider landscape, the wilder wisdom that comes from life unfolding at its own, sometimes inconvenient pace.
And you said earlier that slowness is particularly dangerous to the ego. Why? Because it creates space, a vacuum.
Exactly. The ego thrives on constant doing, on speed, on filling every moment. Speed creates the illusion of control, of mastery, and it keeps us perpetually busy enough, distracted enough to avoid confronting uncomfortable truths or deeper aches within ourselves.
But slowness forces a pause.
Slowness creates silence. And in that silence, things can leak in, truths can surface. It forces us to notice, maybe for the first time in a while, that quiet ache underneath all the frantic efficiency. Perhaps a longing for genuine connection, or for simple stillness, or for a sense of meaning that you just can't measure on a spreadsheet. Slowness forces a kind of reckoning with your own internal landscape. It's uncomfortable for the ego, but potentially transformative for the soul.
So if we can manage to shift our focus, even for a moment, from the ticking clock to just the rich content of the present moment, the urgency should start to soften naturally, shouldn't it? I'm thinking about that example you gave. Witnessing dignity in someone moving slowly.
Yes. Imagine you're feeling impatient, maybe behind someone elderly who is moving with great care, very deliberately, across, say, a wet pavement or navigating a tricky doorway. Your first impulse, driven by that conditioned ego, is resistance. Come on, hurry up, you're holding me up.
Yeah,
But what if, just for a moment, you perform that pause we talked about? What if you consciously let your breath drop down into your belly, relaxed your shoulders, and just really looked? Truly witnessed the dignity in their movement, the effort involved, the focused presence they might be exhibiting just to navigate that small space safely.
The second I shift from seeing them as an impediment to my progress to seeing them as a fellow human being, maybe demonstrating care or courage, the whole internal narrative changes. My urgency suddenly feels, well, kind of absurd. Petty, even.
Exactly. In that tiny shift of perception, you move from being the frantic, stressed-out manager of your timeline to becoming a kind of reverent witness of life, unfolding exactly as it is in that moment. And that simple conscious choice, made again and again in these small moments, the choice to prioritize presence over acceleration, connection over efficiency. That's the very beginning of what we might call bodhicitta.
Bodhicitta, what's that?
It translates roughly as the awakened heart, or the mind of enlightenment. It's the compassionate aspiration and commitment to act for the benefit of all beings. And it doesn't start with grand gestures, it starts right here, in these tiny, mundane choices. Choosing to respond with a moment of patient observation instead of reflexive irritation. Choosing to silently acknowledge your humanity matters. This moment, just as it is, matters even if it doesn't fit my personal agenda right now.
And it's fascinating that modern science is actually validating this shift, isn't it? Confirming that pausing isn't just some nice spiritual idea, it's actually the more intelligent response.
Absolutely. The neuroscience bears this out beautifully.
Yeah.
When we react instantly with impatience, the clenched jaw, the shallow breathing, the foot tapping, we're primarily activating the amygdala. That's the brain's ancient fear and reaction center. We're basically operating in a primitive survival-based fight-or-flight mode, and that mode is cognitively quite limited. Tunnel vision, remember.
Right, but the pause.
But the pause, the conscious breath, the structured inquiry. What am I controlling? What's the story that activates the prefrontal cortex? That's the highly evolved part of the brain responsible for complex processing, reasoning, emotional regulation, empathy, clarity, compassionate choice, executive function.
So slowness isn't the enemy of intelligence.
Slowness, or rather the mindful acceptance of slowness when it arises, isn't the enemy of intelligence at all. It's actually its birthplace. Our deepest insights, our most creative solutions, our wisest decisions, they rarely emerge when we're in a state of frantic, adrenalized rushing. They tend to surface from stillness, from grounded presence, from allowing space. A calm mind is simply a vastly more intelligent and effective tool.
Which leads to that ultimate paradox of freedom, doesn't it? That by somehow allowing others to move at their own pace without judgment, we inadvertently give ourselves permission to do the same.
That's the beautiful, liberating ripple effect. When we stop trying to impose our rigid timeline on the external world, we naturally start to soften the judgment we apply to ourselves. We stop beating ourselves up for needing rest, for needing time to reflect, for needing a slow moment just to absorb something or feel something.
We start to untie our self-worth from our speed.
We begin to realize, maybe deeply for the first time, that our inherent worth was never actually tied to how fast we moved or how much we produced. It was always and only ever tied to the depth of our presence, our awareness, right here, right now. We can start to let go of trying to optimize every single second of our existence and begin, tentatively perhaps, to trust the natural unfolding flow of life again.
So when the world seems to slow us down, it's not really slowing us down, it's calling us back.
It's calling you back. Calling you back from the frantic, often illusory future you're chasing. Calling you back from the defensive, repetitive story you're mentally rehearsing. Calling you back into the raw, unedited, sometimes uncomfortable, but ultimately beautiful truth of now. And in that return, in that surrender to the pace of reality, you discover something amazing.
What's that?
That the truest form of speed is actually focused stillness. And the deepest kind of human efficiency isn't optimization, it's peace. #hack outro.
Wow, okay. This whole deep dive has really brought things together for me. I feel like there are two huge shifts in understanding. The first one is crystal clear now. That suffering I feel, the impatience, it's fundamentally caused by my own refusal to just be present. It's driven by my ego's desperate need to control a timeline that, well, that doesn't really exist outside my own head. Exactly. It's the resistance to what is that hurts. And the second key takeaway flowing from that is realizing that the kind of efficiency we're often relentlessly chasing is actually a pretty fragile construct. It's utterly secondary, maybe even irrelevant, compared to the kind of grounded intelligence and genuine peace that can emerge when we learn to surrender just a little to life's natural, unpredictable, sometimes slow rhythm. The very interruption we dread might actually be the invitation we most desperately need.
It's amazing. We started this conversation just analyzing that tiny, almost embarrassing twitch of irritation you feel at the grocery store checkout, right? And we've ended up realizing that the person moving slowly in front of us wasn't really the obstacle at all. In a strange way, they were the perfect teacher, the exact teacher required for us in that precise moment.
They showed us exactly where our hidden psychological hooks are, didn't they? Where we're attached, where we're clinging. They reveal the fragile inner dam we've constructed, the one that trembles and threatens to break under the slightest pressure from the river of reality. The moment we stop fighting the flow of time, fighting the present moment, we stop being time's victim, and we can simply become its witness, aware, present, and free.
I think that feels like the perfect, reflective place to pause for today, to leave you, our listener, with a question that kind of gathers up everything we've explored on this journey inward.
Yes, a final, powerful invitation, something for you to just gently carry with you, maybe mull over the next time you feel that familiar clenching in your jaw when you're stuck in traffic or waiting in a line somewhere.
Ask yourself this: what if the world isn't moving too slowly, but you've been moving too fast to see it?